Good afternoon, everyone. My name, if you don't know me, is Monica Wedlock-Kilpatrick, and I serve as the Director of Organizational Development for MBA. We're so excited that this group is gathering here as we participate in our second pre-trip webinar as we prepare for our 2019 immigration detention immersion trip. And we have an opportunity today to talk about immigration, children, and trauma. But before we do, I just wanted to share a couple of things with you. One is that this webinar is being recorded and we will make available to you all so that you could watch it again. The other note regarding the webinar specifically is that you will have time at the end for questions and answers. We invite you to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen or in your Zoom menu to enter your question. And we will capture those questions and during the Q&A time, share those questions out and have those answered or have some dialogue as best we can around those. If there are questions that we don't get to regarding time, we will capture those and we can share some thoughts and things on our base camp, our shared base camp project where we're engaging one another around some of the topics related to immigration detention and our experiences. A couple of other reminders as we prepare for our trip is please make sure that your calendar is marked for October 25th at 1 p.m. Eastern. Again, that's October 25th at 1 p.m. Eastern is our mandatory online orientation. We'll have partners from Global Ministries joining us to orient us and prepare us as we prepare for our trip to the border. And so all of those questions you may be wondering about what to wear, you know, what things to say and not say or do and not do, they will be there to share those best practices with us. And look out for a Zoom link through Basecamp again so that you can register for that. Also, I think everyone or almost everyone has been in touch with Kara regarding your flights or your travel arrangements if you're driving. If you have not or you have questions, please be in contact with her ASAP. We are now working on finalizing our ground transportation and we need to be sure we know when everyone's arriving and departing and if there's anything else that we need. If something comes up and you need to make changes, please be in contact as soon as possible with Kara regarding that. And then finally, just an encouragement, as I mentioned before, around Basecamp, that we are sending out questions for your reflection and engagement of one another as we prepare for our time together. And so we strongly encourage you all to share your thoughts, be in conversation, share resources that you might have for the group that they can be reading and engaging and having conversation over those threads as we prepare to be together. I thank you all for participating, and I'm going to turn it now over to Hector, who will introduce our guest speaker. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Monica. And it's an honor to be here with all of you. And yes, I want to introduce Dr. Carlos Correa. When we were thinking about putting together this webinar, we decided to look out, to reach out to some of our partners, some of the people that are working in collaboration with our denomination in the trenches, that they can share their own experiences and also allow us to understand a little bit better some of the big challenges, the systemic challenges that our immigrant families are dealing with, and especially the children. So Dr. Correa, I have here part of his biography. He is an academic and a researcher. He works in the integration of psychology and theology, and attributes having started the conversation about psychology of religion in Latin America. His pedagogical style has been welcomed and celebrated in countries of Latin America, the Caribbean, Asia, and Europe. As speaker, Dr. Correa has touched and transformed the professional life of many around the world. While studying in the state of Massachusetts, Correa came into contact with family system and Salvador Minuchin teaching. And as the result, he obtained a bachelor degree in psychology and influencing the teaching and techniques of his academic mentor, Carl Whitaker. Correa earned a master's degree in marriage and family therapy with a specialization in male psychology and violent behaviors, followed by a second master's degree in theology. He graduated, his graduate studies include obtaining a master's degree in marriage and family therapy, specializing in violent behaviors, and a second doctorate in psychology of religion at the University of Oxford in the United Kingdom. He is the author of numerous chapters and professional and academic articles, and has presented workshop and trainings in more than 40 countries around the world. Among his most recent publications are Toward a Latin American Psychology of Religion, Evolution, Tendencies, and Perspectives. That book was published in 2016, and his long-awaited book, Elusive Men, Why Do Men Flee from Meaningful Relationships? That was published this year. So Dr. Correa Bernier is a professor of religion psychology at the School of Religion in the Pacific School of Religions in Berkeley, California, and professor of marriage and family therapy at the University Graduate School of Psychology in Tijuana, Baja California, Mexico, and founding president of the Family Institute, a graduate institute offering master's and doctoral programs in the field of marriage and family and marriage therapy, violent behaviors, and psychiatric epidemiology. He is also the director of Centro Romero, and he will be sharing with us part of his work as part of Centro Romero. So Carlos, you are more than welcome. We give you now the opportunity to share.
Hector, gracias. Thank you so much. Glad to be with you, and thank you for the opportunity to share some news, some headaches, some projects, some dreams and hopes from the border region. I'm coming together with you from Tijuana, so if by any chance, which I hope not, we lose contact, I will rejoin with you as soon as possible. Just to give you a context of Centro Romero was established in 2007. It was the result of some brainstorming that we were doing at the national setting at that time. I was sharing some responsibilities at the United Church of Christ national setting in Cleveland. I was in charge of the Office and Program of Environmental Justice. I ended up working in that field because of my interest in the development of violent behaviors and heavy metals in the bloodstreams of men, and because I had many clients back in Chicago from the Tijuana, San Diego region. I decided in 1985 to come down to Tijuana and see what was happening at the time. And that's when I encountered myself with the Maquiladora sector, which are the manufacturing companies situated in Tijuana. Basically, Tijuana is called the television capital of the world. So there are big chances that the television that you have at your home was put together in Tijuana. So I say all that just to present my disclaimer. I'm not Mexican. I originally from Puerto Rico, so I don't fully understand the Mexican experience. So I still being taught by my brothers and sisters only in Tijuana, as you will be when you come down to the border. So we're gonna be sharing that learning experience. Hector, if you can move down to the slides, then our border is the busiest border crossing in the world. So many people say, most people say that is the busiest border crossing in the hemisphere. And basically we see 50,000 cars moving northbound into the United States a day, along with 25,000 pedestrians in a daily basis. So if you have never been in San Isidro in Tijuana, you're gonna find yourself in a very, very busy, dynamic region. Also, go ahead, Hector. Also, we are located 2 minutes away from downtown Tijuana, which is really put us in this, once again, dynamic context, but also a very challenging place to be. We face on a daily basis issues with sex trafficking, which Tijuana is well known for. Many people don't know that the United States now is the second largest destination country for sex trafficking. Tijuana, the border crossing in San Isidro, identify victims in a yearly basis is around 25 to 35,000 of victims going into the United States. And this is what everything starts. Along with that, of course, most migrants that come from southern Mexico and from Central America, they end up congregating here at the Tijuana downtown area. Go ahead, Hector. We also have ourselves we function as a Christian-based community. So a lot of people think that we are a church. We tell people that we are not a church. We are much more than a church because we congregate oftenly. We share, service. We worship together. We work together. And there is a picture of our last meeting in Tijuana. Go ahead, Hector, which really put us in a place in which a lot of people that are seeking to congregate in a non-Catholic setting, they call them C7, which the way we call our program, their church. Centro Romero is a self-sustaining ministry, is fully run by volunteers, including myself. So that means that you're gonna meet a lot of people that really put a lot of time and lots of efforts in the way we function. Go ahead, Hector. We also have several programs that we have at this time running in Centro Romero with a methodology that we captured from Paulo Freire. For those of you that are from a teaching background, we work on the basis of reflection, action, reflection. So everything we do, all the programs we have start with a community reflection on the issues we're facing. We find our ways how to integrate into the community, into the life of our city, into the life of San Diego and Tijuana regarding that issue we have identified. And after we start working on those issues, we come together and we reflect on regard of what is the changes that we are motivating in our context. So our methodology is very, very, very close to who we are. I will follow you, Hector. You can keep moving the slides and I will follow with an explanation. Our mission is pretty straightforward. What we're looking for is bring people like you coming to our ministry, to our cities, including members of our immediate community. We work with your groups and with our folks down here in Tijuana, providing the education, the experiences in order to build them up. And what we're looking for is to send them out so they can be witness in their own context. There's a Zapatista thought that we use in our midst. We say that, the border would follow you wherever you go. So if you pay attention to your city, to your neighborhood, you would find many of the issues we're facing down here in your own community. We don't work by ourselves. We have a wonderful group of partners that we work with, especially with the Catholic Church. We have many ministries, as you can see, and also Pentecostal churches, many community-based agencies that make possible our work, including global ministries. So your church, your offering, your contribution, your pledges are making a difference. In the last crisis we faced, global ministries, DOC really, really make a huge difference. Our programs include in the immersion program, inviting people like you to come down, to examine, to look, to talk to those folks that are facing these issues personally. So we started as an immersion program, and since then, we are much more than that. Go ahead, Hector. As you heard me say, we have all the programs that are moving. These are some of them. Theological education, the only one in Tijuana providing theological education at master's degree level. We have program for divorcees. You heard about the Family Institute. We have a program for violent males. We have our worship community, and we have a program for women survivors of sex trafficking and domestic violence. All of them are active at this moment. And as I mentioned before, go ahead, Hector, we are also a worship community, and this is us when we come together. Sometimes we're larger than this group, sometimes we are smaller, but we come together basically every 2 months. And these folks come from all over the place in Tijuana. Go ahead, Hector. We also are involved in the Santuario movement. We started this program. This is the most recent program that we started around 2 years ago. We have a family from Venezuela at this point, living in Centro Romero, which you're gonna meet in your trip. And we decided to jump into this program because of all the changes in the policies we have been facing since the beginning of the new administration. As you know, basically through the news and through the papers, the policies that used to really be the framework of the immersion process in the United States are at this point upside down. Before, somebody looking for a political asylum would come to the line, to La Línea, the way we call it, to the borderline, and request asylum. They will be allowed to come into the country and start with their processes right there and then. Not anymore. Most of the people that are looking and seeking asylum are now staying in Tijuana, which is totally unexpected. So, which means that the amount of people congregating on the streets of Tijuana is just larger and larger in a daily basis. Among them, of course, most of the families are young families. Most of them are single moms families. And along with that change of policy comes trauma, because most of these families are, first of all, defranchised in Tijuana. There has been displaced. So the issues and the challenges we're facing at this point among these families are housing, are medical services, medical care, food, and of course the ever-present sex trafficking prevention. Because most of these families, as I said, are led by a single mother, which means that they and their children could be easily, be captive in this horrible business in Tijuana. I end up, being part of the sex trafficking. Go ahead, Hector. So when we're talking about, the emotional issues that these children are facing, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for, in our case, in Centro Romero, we decided around 2 years ago that we're going to be focusing our efforts on single moms and their children because they are fragile, because they have nowhere to go, because they're exposed to this horrible business of sex trafficking in the border. So this is one of our daily challenges, helping moms from Central America to be located in a place where they're safe, where they can actually satisfy their physical, spiritual, emotional needs, along with their children, and also where they can get some legal guidance in their asylum process, which they now have to start from Tijuana, which is not guaranteed that the process would move according to our Constitution and according to the law. So the more defranchised they are, obviously, the trauma obviously is also deeper. So single moms are the ones that are facing most of the challenges in Tijuana. Single men are as well, but these gentlemen have all the programs, many programs in Tijuana, because Tijuana was set for female migrants. Most of the time, the migrants were males. This is what happened around a year and a half ago. I think you heard about the movement of Central American families moving from Central America to Tijuana. And thanks to global ministries and thanks to DOC, we were able to create these tent communities that Centro Romero have been able to provide with other ministries. And we are providing not only the tents, but also we are providing their food and medical care. At the beginning, the city of Tijuana was working with us, obviously, and unfortunately, funds are diminishing. So now we are carrying with this ministry and with this situation ourselves. As you can see, among other tents, we have larger tents in which we are accommodating parents with their children. And then we have other tents and other areas where single moms are now located with their children. Around a year and a half ago, we had around 1,200 of them. Right now, the numbers of families without housing in Tijuana is around 3,000. So the challenges is larger and larger. Along those needs, and because of also physical trauma, we decided to jump in and create these medical mobile units, which we use to provide medical services and medical care to this group of people around Tijuana. And once again, global ministries help us with that. So through this mobile unit, then we are providing dental services. We are also providing medical services, as you can see, along with a ministry known as La Casa de los Pobres, House of the Poor. We're able to provide food services to adult males, to adult families with children, and to children that are traveling by themselves, which is an issue that we're going to be discussing in a minute. The number of children traveling by themselves is growing in a daily basis. Most of their parents are away in the United States, so somebody from their families in their country of origin put them in a train along with a coyote and send them north in order for their kids to meet with their parents in the United States. So Casa de los Pobres is the one providing us with most of the food. We provide them with the food, they're providing the children with the services. And some of these children are in this picture. I would say around 2 months ago, we were totally surprised by the unexpected change of policy in the United States in which children were deported. And so we took care of 500 children that were deported at night by themselves, with the younger one being 4 years old and the oldest one being 14 years old. We've been working with Guatemala, Honduras, and Salvador governments in order to relocate these children back home with their families, which is one of the challenges we're facing today. But without Casa de los Pobres and this Catholic ministry, we wouldn't be able to actually help these children in their process. Go ahead, Hector. So food services is an important piece. We are serving in a daily basis around 2,000 to 2,500 breakfasts and lunches. So it's a large part of our ministry. The next slide, we make emphasis on the issues of sex trafficking, education, and intervention, because single moms are easy prey for the traffickers. So we are literally working with these single moms, and we have an employee and a doctor that is helping us in providing health services to the young ladies that have been victimized by sex trafficking and that are working on the streets in Tijuana, which is one of the painful pictures that you're going to see on your trip, and which is also a situation that is not only embarrassing for the city of Tijuana, but also a challenge for those of us that are trying to make a difference among the migration realities in our city. So very complex, very challenging. So we need to start looking for new ways to help these families to get located in the place that they should be in a dignifying way. So when we're talking about all this, as you can imagine, we're talking about trauma. Trauma for the adults, trauma for the city, but also trauma for the children. So what we've been doing is just working directly with these families in order not only to evaluate their physical needs, their spiritual needs, but also their emotional needs. As you can imagine, once a child leaves the structure of a home, a child is not receiving a daily doses of love and care. And when a child is confused about the discipline that he or she should be following within the family, a very disturbing, painful reality comes and takes place in the life of these children. Go ahead, Hector. So we are now evaluating how we can work with this new normal for these families that have been really detached from their countries and their families, especially dealing with children that are moving into a country, into an environment that is extremely violent, that is extremely unstable, that is extremely cruel, and that sometimes will present a situation to a child in which he or she could be easily separated. In the midst of all that trauma, could be easily separated from their parents, then facing that new trauma of physical and emotional detachment from the most important person in their lives. So how can we understand trauma? Go ahead, Hector. So we are looking into what is happening to these children in Tijuana when they're separated, when they're arriving in a city. Well, as you can see, this piece or this picture, it says from a newspaper in Tijuana that migrant children that has been unaccompanied by their parents are disappearing, are vanishing in Tijuana. We believe that this is very close to the reality of sex trafficking in Tijuana. Recently, when I went to the DOC assembly, and I did a presentation there, a lady approached me and told me that she didn't believe one word of the information I shared with the group because she could not believe that children had been deported from the United States or children have been summoned to migration courts in the United States. That's why I decided then to help people understand through newspapers that are documenting this report that I'm sharing with you. As you can see, Associated Press got hold of this horrible news in which 70 children under the age of 1 were summoned to deportation proceedings. Go ahead, Hector. And this is happening in a daily basis in our courts. Now, Mexico and the United States are competing in which is deporting more children in a daily basis. The title of this article is Mexico is deporting more children to Central America than the United States. A new reality, a new trauma. Children have been deported back home without an adult accompanying them. Go ahead, Hector. ACLU is a close partner in San Diego, and they got hold of the reality that is affecting these children. 3-year-old child being summoned to represent him herself in court. Hector, if you move to the next slide, you're gonna see a new reality in the United States. The Seattle Times shared with us this article in which a training judge in Seattle, Washington, believed that a 3-year-old can represent himself or herself in court after this judge have talked to her or him for half an hour or 45 minutes. This judge honestly believed that this child will be in the best situation possible to represent himself or herself in court in order to be immediately deported to their country of origin. Go ahead, Hector. So the trauma is not only when the child is moving, it's also when the child arrives, and not only to the children that are moving from Central America to the United States. Francisco Galicia is a US citizen, a teenager that was held by CBP on ICE for 3 weeks before being released, even though he had a passport with him and even though he had legal representation. So it's not only what is happening on their way to Central America to the United States, it's also what is going on to the children when they arrive in the United States and also to those that are already in the United States because they are American citizens. They have been exposed to these kinds of trauma and detachment. Go ahead, Hector. So we are looking into this reality. The American Psychological Association is looking to the subject of trauma, asking themselves how the young life was disrupted when they are detained and when they are deported to Central America and other countries. So the fact that you are asking yourself, and you're gathered here with me, asking ourselves regarding trauma, this is not an isolated exercise. The American Association, the American Psychological Association, the American Medical Association, and many other groups in the United States are asking and looking into the same reality, looking into the impact, the traumatic impact that these realities are having in the children approaching the border of the United States. Go ahead, Hector. So, and there are many, many, many other articles. For example, here you have another article with inflicting terror in children and their families in the process of being deported. These are 3 young ladies that arrived back home at O'Hare Airport, and they were detained by CBP, even though they were American citizens. Their aunt was seeking asylum, but they were American citizens, and they were detained for 13 hours in Chicago. Go ahead, Hector. So this issue of inflicting trauma is all over the place. There are people that are reflecting on the reality of our country because we are supposed to be better than this. Go ahead, Hector, but in occasions we are not better than that. We have children that have been returned to Central America and Mexico under the risk of violence, rape, sex trafficking. Go ahead, Hector. And UNICEF have been very active in looking into these situations that we show in these 2 articles. Go ahead. The trauma is not only the trip, it's what happened to the children when they are deported in the process of being deported. These children, before they've been deported, they spend 3, 4, 6, 8, 12 months in a cage looking and waiting for be deported with no security whatsoever, in occasion no medical care. Last night we received 2 children that were reported, age 14 and 15, that we believe that they have TB, so they're being evaluated this morning. I will share more information about that in a minute. But what is happening with these children have been then targeted to be deported? Go ahead. And of course, what happened when the deportation is taking place in our airports? Most of the time, these children are not noticed by the public, but they are, of course, exposed to extreme violence and trauma in the process. Go ahead, Hector. So the issues with children have been well documented, not only in Mexico and Central America, but as you can see, has been well documented in the United States. Go ahead, Hector. So it is a question that we are looking, because the last thing that happened is that the current administration had been in the process of deporting children that are in the United States receiving medical services. These children, go ahead, Hector, are paying, their families are paying for their treatment. And of course, now we are deporting children with cancer. A few weeks ago, the administration stated that they were just rescinding this decision. That is not the case. The children have been still being targeted. Letters of deportation is still being received by these families, and they are children that are taken care of in hospitals. For example, in Massachusetts Children's Hospital, like the case from a Brazilian family that have been receiving notice that the child will be deported, even though the child is receiving medical services at this hospital in Boston. So it's a new dilemma. Go ahead. It's a new dilemma. It's a death sentence to a child that is suffering from cancer, from HIV, and other illnesses. That is, they're not consuming the resources of our state or of our nation. Most of their families are paying, but now they have been deported and they've been targeted to be deported to their home country. So it's trauma in the Mexican side for these migrant children, but there is also trauma in the US side. And this trauma, of course, is everywhere. It's not only affecting the children, but it's also affecting their families. And we are seeing this huge amount of people presenting PTSD symptoms among us. Not only in our side in Mexico, Senator Romero has an office in Tijuana and a place in San Diego, and all the families we're seeing that are being targeted to be deported, they're presenting a lot of stress. And the issue with a child and trauma is that the child has to be constantly adapting to this stress, which are not giving the child the time necessary to regulate their new reality, to regulate what is happening among them. It's stress after stress. So we are looking into a problem that is increasing as days pass by. Go ahead, Hector. So the PTSD is the issue we are facing, and the issue we are trying to understand how we're gonna do this. Know how we're gonna be able to support these families, how we're gonna be able to actually develop what is necessary to target the trauma that is coming as a result of our government agencies getting involved in these families, because we're talking about power and control. You see, when we talk about violent behaviors, we're always looking into power and control, first of all. And we're seeing these families have been now neglected, even though they're seeking asylum, and they're being neglected and left in Mexico, and a second and third country is supposed to be providing them with a process that is owned by the United States, because the United States is the country in which they're seeking asylum. We see this kind of power and control taken over. Go ahead, Hector. So we are sitting, and by we, I'm talking about myself and my students and the universities where I teach. We are sitting and we are evaluating these children to see if we're gonna have to be dealing with a new therapeutic approach to this family, taking into consideration the specific factors mainly related to the stress and the trauma that these kids are experiencing because of discrimination, because of urban violence, because abuse by the law enforcement officers, because of forced removal of family separation. That's a new reality. I don't remember in my 32 years of being teaching psychology and family intervention, I don't recall thinking about how can I teach my students how to intervene in a family that have been traumatized by these kinds of abuse, discrimination, urban violence, abuse by law enforcement officers, forced removal of family separation. First time for me in 33 years. When you come down to San Diego, you will find and you will be able to talk to families that have been affected and they are experiencing this kind of disorders at this point. From a mental health perspective, obviously, when we look into trauma, we know that these kids are exposed to mental disorders, not only limited to PTSD, but depression, psychosis, sleeping disorders, eating disorders, and we are facing now in Tijuana, which is really at a level of being a problem without control, of suicides. In the last 3 months, we have dealt with 3 families that have lost their children, teenage children that are waiting for asylum, and they kill themselves in Tijuana. That is happening all over Tijuana. It is happening among different communities in which these children, apparently they see no hope in their process. So the impact of migration on mental health is really, really an issue that not a lot of people have explored in the past, and we have this challenge in front of us, including not only those of us that are involved in the field of psychology, but also to the church that is looking to help those that are defranchised. So how can the church can intervene, in the intervention and recognition and providing early, culturally appropriate care for the migrant populations? I think that's our challenge as a church. Because most of the time, these people are finding a place where they feel they belong among people of faith as you and me. Really, I mean, our students are doing great work when it comes to psychological intervention, but the impact that really are providing the opportunity for growth and the opportunity for change and the opportunity to regulate the trauma is coming through the church. Unfortunately, talking from my point of view, most of our churches in San Diego and in California are not providing that care. And I'm talking my own community. I'm talking about the United Church of Christ. And I'll do it with all due respect. The absence of the church is painful, frustrating, really embarrassing. And once again, I'm talking about my own denomination. To my surprise, and I was sharing with Hector a few weeks ago, to my surprise, the Catholic Church have embraced our efforts, and they have provided us with many, many resources and with many volunteers. Definitely global ministries. And I know that we are receiving also funds through global ministries from the UCC, have been providing us funds to be able to provide housing, food, medical care, medication, psychological intervention to these children. We want to actually be able to prevent and recognize early enough in the life of these young men and women in order that we can actually provide the space for there to be healed appropriately. Go ahead, Hector. So knowing that you're coming down to consider the magnitude of this challenge really moved me greatly, because we need to have effective ministerial and methodological approaches to this population that is at this time just waiting to be careful. And we are aware that we're not able to do that by ourselves. So by you coming to us and sharing time with us is really bringing a lot of hope to our community. I hope that you're going to have the time to actually be able to talk, to meet some of these folks, to understand by yourself, besides this presentation and my isolated explanation of what is going on. I hope that you're going to come and be able to actually gather together with these folks and be able to go back home with a fully human, personal understanding of what I'm talking about. Go ahead, Hector. Because at this point, we need people that be able to consider, what these migrant populations are facing and what is the level of their trauma experience, and what are the implications, for their functionality among themselves and also within the church, because the church is really, really important. And we hope that the church is going to be able to provide and give attention to this population and to also share with others, and expose the trauma that, from my point of view, most of the time, these children have been exposed because of new policies and new policies in our country. Go ahead, Hector. So, to be honest with you, when I deal with these issues on a daily basis, I can tell you that it's most of the time feels overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. It's overwhelming, it's challenging, and the feeling stays with you until, and I'm being honest, until a person like Rivera or Hector shows up and lets you know there's a group of folks that are coming from all over the country because they're interested in knowing what is going on and asking, how can we help? And I think there's what the hope is at this point. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Carlos. We have received one question, and I'm going to invite all the participants. If you have a question, you can go to our Q&A section and send us the question so we can do our best to answer it. And the question was asked for one of my personal heroes, Dean Bocalos. And his question is the following: isn't this treatment of children in violation of international human rights laws that the United States is required to follow? Why are these provisions being enforced? And for anybody who doesn't know who Dean is, he is a lawyer. That's why he asked that. So what would you like to share about that question, Carlos?
The answer, as the attorney shared with, is yes. Yes, that's the frustration we face on a daily basis. ACLU has been overwhelmed with the cases that we're presenting in court, precisely basing ourselves on our Constitution and in the human rights that have been not only neglected, but denied to these young children. Yes, our government, the current administration, apparently have decided to create a second constitution in the air and taking decisions on the vacuum and changing policies. And unfortunately, our Congress, especially the Senate, is paralyzed and is not providing these children with the rights they deserve. Yes, the answer is yes. And my question is the same as the brother attorney that shared the question with us, is why have we become so blind to something that is so obvious in front of our eyes? I'm still waiting for an answer. I do not understand. I do not understand.
So we are planning to spend some time at Centro Romero, and then we're gonna be, when we cross the border in Tijuana, we're gonna also be spending some time with, I forgot the name, the
Colectivo.
Yeah. So is there anything in particular that you could recommend the group, you know, something in particular that you could recommend the group to either pay attention or to be receptive or to, I don't know, just, I truly believe that when we enter in holy spaces like this, sometimes it's good for us to do it with all our senses and with our eyes very clear. So is there anything that comes to your mind that you think will be helpful for our participants to be aware of?
Definitely, Hector. I would invite the group to pay attention to the contrast from one place to the other, even within Tijuana. Pay attention. You're gonna be going to Colectivo Chilpancingo, which is a group of mothers that around 15 years ago decided to present a lawsuit against Mexico and the United States through the NAFTA tribunal. And the case was based on the fact that a company owner, a maquiladora owner from San Diego that was in the business of processing batteries, decided to abandon his company in Tijuana, and the company caught on fire one summer, and all these batteries melted. We were talking about airplane batteries, car batteries, and so on, and all that heavy metal penetrated the ground and the water, and we started facing a lot of issues, health issues. And this group of women, 10 women, no formal education whatsoever, no political positions whatsoever, decided to present a lawsuit against the United States, specifically through the NAFTA and also against the Mexican government. And they won the case, by the way. They won the case and they got the site cleaned up. So they have an immense background. And that is one of the contrasts that it would be very interesting for you to look into. How these folks in Tijuana have the ability, the spirit, the energy, the commitment to actually move against two huge governments and actually go as the little guy and the giant Goliath in the Bible and won the case. That's very important. That's very important. The other contrast, it would be for you to look into the infrastructure where the American companies are located versus the infrastructure where Lupita's church is located. Very important, because you're gonna see no difference between the infrastructure among the maquiladora sector, but you're gonna see a huge difference where the church is located. So that fallacy of lack of resources in Tijuana is an economic reality. Our Mexican brothers and sisters have been exploited. So you and I could live, very comfortably in the United States. You should ask these sisters in Colectivo how they were treated in maquiladoras regarding protection, building televisions. Back then, mercury was one of the heavy metals present in these television sets. And these women were working, putting televisions together without any kind of protections. That's why in Chilpancingo, where you're gonna be at, is the center of birth defects in Mexico. Children being born with their brains outside their heads. Children being born with no eyes, no arms, no legs because of the heavy metal contamination. But yet they are providing all these goods, for the United States. Tijuana is a city of significant contrast. You have many Americans that live in Tijuana because it's cheaper to live in Tijuana, even though Tijuana can provide the same luxuries that they get in San Diego. But obviously the distribution of wealth is not equally among the population. That's very important. Also, when you move towards Playa de Tijuana, you should invite the driver, Hector, to take you through downtown Tijuana. Zona Norte, la zona de la tolerancia, the zone of tolerance, is the sex trafficking, prostitution area in which the market is open to consumers, from the United States. And a few years ago, we ended up in a fight because Tijuana and San Diego were looking into making Tijuana something like Las Vegas, and they call it the project Tijuana La Chula, the cute, Tijuana the cute city. And San Diego was in agreement with it. It was already ready to get themselves involved in this horrible situation. So I would invite you, Hector, to look into these kind of contrasting realities in Tijuana. And if you go through the center, I will make sure that I will give you the address of these 10 cities that we've been working in and putting together, so you can identify some of the families that are benefiting through the funds through global ministries. And if you have the opportunity, then I would invite you to stop and have some conversations with them as well.
Thank you. We have 2 more questions, and we'll still have time. There was a question that I think you can answer part and I can answer part. Is asked by Chris Morton. Carlos, how would you define our purpose for this trip? The other part of the question that I probably will answer is, how will the MBA define our purpose for this trip? So
thank you for that question, my brother. I really appreciate it, because since I've been working in partnership with global ministries through Brother Rivera, the word that I have in my mind defining the experience has been the sense of solidarity and presence. So by you coming down, you're gonna reinforce the voice of hope that we try to share through our ministry to these folks we serve in Tijuana on a daily basis. Our voice would no longer be, my dear brother, in isolation.
Amen.
It would be you and everybody coming with you, reinforcing this voice, this presence of the Christ, making himself or herself present in the midst of all this oppression that we're facing in Tijuana. You're gonna help us be less lonely in this overwhelming efforts that we're facing in a daily basis. So you have no idea of how much it means for you to come and actually show your face and show your heart and your presence among the people we're saving. Really, honestly, it is a transforming experience for most of the people we serve, because suddenly they realize that behind us is a huge community of witnesses that are ready to fight and for justice and to support everything we're doing in the border region. So my definition has been and will be that definition of a spiritual solidarity coming from you it would be a blessing, honestly.
Amen. Thank you for that. And I could share that when we MBA, when we were giving shape to this immersion trip, and over on our conversations, we have very clear that this is an intentional conversation, an intentional moment for us to witness, to be, ministry of presence, and hopefully to process that in a way in which we move to actions and liberations that hopefully will connect some of the lessons, some of the stories, some of the context in which we're going to be part of, and we're going to be learning, and then we can through those lenses see our own neck of the woods, our own reality, and see how those families, those that are struggling with trauma, are nearby, and how can you support and create means of salvation and liberation for those on your area, and also to figure out and imagine ways in which we can collaborate with ministries like the Ministry of Centro Romero. Monica, would you like to add something?
Sure, and this is completely an add. I think there were 3 specific purposes that we defined even in the invitation to the groups that are participating in this. You already heard from both Carlos and Hector the opportunity to hear from and partner with border communities regarding their needs, and then how we as the church respond. And to add to that, the realities that what's happening at the border has effects in our in our churches across the nation, right? And even, I would venture to say across the world, but that's personal. But really, so what does that mean for us, or as regional ministers, as the disciples activist groups, persons who will be present? What does that mean for us as general ministries, all finding ourselves in different places across the nation, with people from communities, migrant populations from communities who are deeply affected by the issues happening at the border? So it's not just a border story, it is a story for all of us. One of the other things is that, we as MBA hope to support all of our participants' experience and knowledge of these issues, of this experience that we're going to have together, and to talk together about how do we move forward, right? One of the things I heard Carlos mention was the need for early and cultural appropriate care in our congregations, in our local disciples organizations, as it relates to MBA, our health and social service organizations. What could or does that early cultural care look like? What could that care look like? And so we want to offer some opportunity even after this experience to talk about that and move towards some concrete ways that can be lived out in the life of our church. And then to thirdly, make some intersections with some of the work, other justice work that's happening across the life of our church, and where does this issue intersect? And it does in so many ways coming out of MBA's prison and jail ministry. So the detention piece is a piece of the bigger mass incarceration story, right? But there are so many other ways, all of the justice issues that folks are facing daily, the immigration issue, the detention issues intersect. And how do we talk about that? How do we understand those pieces? And how do we figure out ways to come at all of those issues in a very strategic way? So I would name that, and hope that answers, Chris, your question. But I think that question is also will further emerge as we are further together. So. Thank you.
We have one more question, and we still have time. And this was asked by Mark Anderson. What is the role of United Nations in what is happening? Are they hands off because it is the United States? It seems like there are so many human violations and we just thumb our noses at the international community. Anything from other countries calling us out?
UNICEF has been working very closely with us from the beginning of the crisis around a year and a half ago. Personally, I'm very grateful to the immediate approach they had and how open they were to work with us as community leaders. And at the beginning, the resources they provide were immediate, unfortunately diminishing right after that. Many countries in Central America keep complaining and presenting their disagreement with the new policies to the United States. Let me give you an example of why that is so important. As I mentioned during my presentation a few weeks ago, well, 2 months ago, I received a call around 10 o'clock at night, letting me know that a bunch of children have been deported from the United States to the city of Tijuana. It was a time when I think you saw in the news that there were a lot of issues and a lot of noise regarding family separation and children in cages. And there was a congressional visit that was established for one of the detention centers in San Diego. And it was that detention center who decided the night before the congressional visit to deport a huge amount of children, around 250 the first night, 250 the second night. The youngest child that was deported in that group was 4 years old. We have no idea of who he is. We have no idea of where he come from. The child can hardly say his name. How are we supposed to help this kid to be relocated with his family, extended family, wherever he comes from? When through ACLU, we requested information regarding a child, our government, CBP, denied knowing of him and denied deporting this group of children to Tijuana. So Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador have been presenting through the organisms, that are appropriate, their complaints of against human rights violations and so on. But unfortunately, the reality is that the Senate is paralyzed and nothing is happening. Decisions have been taken in isolation without consultation. And it is the way it was. We get to know about what is going on because some community leader gets aware of this kind of maneuvering, and then everything else get mobilized, and then we get involved in the issues. But no, nothing is moving. And even though many countries are complaining, there is no instrument, there is no vehicle, there are apparently no apparatus that make their voices to be heard and actions to be taken. So that's the sad reality we are facing in this issue. With this specific child, the 4-year-old, now we are trying through DNA test, through the University of California at San Diego, to identify where this child is coming from. The Mexican government only gave us 3 months to get these kids situated in their home countries, and time is running out. Out of 500, we still have 75 kids that we're working with. Hopefully most of them would be relocated by the end of this month. But the one that really concerns me is the 4-year-old, because we have no way to deal with them when the time is up. Mexico is telling us we're not gonna keep him. We don't know who he is. We cannot give that child in adoption. We're not gonna be able to take that kid back to the United States. He's not gonna be able to stay in Mexico. Where are we supposed to take him? It's just a migrant child. For many people, meaningless, valueless. So that's the reality we're facing, and we have nowhere to go to do justice for this kid, unfortunately.
Oof. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. We have one last question. We still have time. Rick Spleth asked a simple question, and Monica already answered it. Centro Romero has a official website. I think we already shared the Facebook connection to Centro Romero, but if there's a specific website that you want to share, you know, that will be good too.
Yeah, our Facebook is totally outdated because of all the activity. Our volunteer that is in charge of that has been in Rosarito living full time. So unfortunately, we haven't been able to keep our Facebook updated. But you can visit our website, is theromerocenter.com. And there you can read, you know, about who we are and some of our programs. And we are looking into, at the end of this month, when everything is get back to normal, unless we get another deportation from San Diego, we're gonna get back to our Facebook page and keep it, you know, updated.
We will be sure to send out that website to you all through our base camp, and all of the either websites or Facebook connections that we have for any of the partners that we will be visiting when we send out a pre-trip prep letter to you all. There'll be links in there for those places that have those resources.
So we are more than thankful, Carlos, for your ministry, for what you're doing, and for sharing with us some of your, you know, your work, your challenges, your hopes, your desire to keep going. And we are looking forward into spending time with you and with the people from your community, and then with the colectivo. And again, we're thankful for this webinar that you have been able to share with us.
I'm the one that I'm thankful, brother. Thank you for the invitation. I mean, really, it's been very meaningful to me, and I'm looking forward to have you and to share time with you and to partake of many experiences. I hope that the members of this group don't, because it's very easy to go away from a webinar like this feeling, you know, depressed and down. But I gotta tell you, my brothers and sisters, you know, Christ is still alive, a miracle is still happening. So it is within the hope of the kingdom that we keep going. And in the midst of all the pain and suffering, there are highlights of hope and to rejoice, of which you're gonna be part of when you come down to San Diego. So thank you, Hector. Thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome. So because we don't have more questions, that means that this is the end of our time together. We're gonna continue sharing with the group through the Basecamp project. We're gonna be sharing resources, thoughts. Once again, we invite you to continue exploring and sharing with each other some of our weekly reflections. And we'll be very soon, Carlos, we'll be very soon visiting you and spending time. So may God renew your strengths. May God continue giving you wisdom. And once again, thank you for what you do. And thank you, all of you, for connecting. We're looking forward for our time as a group in this experience. Many blessings. Have a great rest of your day.
You as well.